Welcome into the Dallas Cowboys Report. I am your host, Tom Downey, here with some news this afternoon as the Dallas Cowboys have made a significant move on the defensive staff. Aden Durde is coming in as the new defensive line coach. Now, we mentioned Durde in the past as a potential candidate for this Cowboys staff. We didn't exactly know what role he would end up playing for this, or having, I should say, for this team. But now we know. Durde's coming in as the team's defensive line coach. That move broken today by Todd Archer. He's worked with the defensive line and the linebackers for the Atlanta Falcons in the past. In fact, he's actually the first and only British coach in the NFL, by the way, which I guess is kind of cool. He actually does, by the way, have a tie to this current Dallas Cowboys staff, or I should say organization. Namely, he was a coaching intern back with the Cowboys all the way in 2014 when Jason Garrett was still the head coach for the organization. So it's an interesting move, and I am very curious to see how this ends up going down, how this ends up impacting the Dallas Cowboys and the defensive line. Now, Dan Quinn's background is heavily with the defensive line. So if you're going to go with a lesser, in terms of experience option, it's probably at the defensive line position in terms of coaching staff, because Dan Quinn would be able to help out there probably a little bit more than he would in terms of having a big impact in, say, the secondary, for example. So from that perspective, I do understand it from the Dallas Cowboys and like, okay, this makes some sense. And as it relates to Durde, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't know a lot about him. I think coaching in general is a very difficult thing to identify as, hey, this is a good candidate, because it's so often tied to the actual success when it comes to the players. Like, if you got good players, coaching normally ends up being a little bit better, especially when it relates to the position staff side of things. So, on one hand, I've heard good things about Aden Durde, and I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know, it's British, it's weird. But he's also didn't do a great job in terms of the Falcons' success last year. How much is on him? I think in general there have been praise that I've heard from people who are smart about the coaching staff stuff with Aden Durde. But you're also kind of dabbling in this, hey, we're just rolling back with the Falcons coaching staff, because you look at what they have right now in terms of the Cowboys, the locked and loaded positions on that staff. Dan Quinn is the clear-cut defensive coordinator. He'll help on the defensive line, I'm sure, with Aden Durde. And Joe Whitt is the new defensive passing game coordinator. He'll handle some secondary coach stuff. Maybe Al Harris sticks around to help as well. But that's three Falcons guys. And that defense was bad last year. Now, they did, I think, from a metric perspective, outplay what they invested from a cap and draft pick perspective. But again, it was the talent. The talent wasn't very good, which is also kind of a problem here. Now, we'll dive more into that and more about Aden Durde here in a second, but I want you guys to get your votes in here. Grade the hire for me of Aden Durde as best as you can. A, B, C, D, or F. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section here. What grade are you going to give Aden Durde? A, B, C, D, or F? I'll make this question the pinned comment on today's video, so if you get the ad break, scroll on down and get your votes in. I would say in a bubble, I'm pretty on board with the hiring of Durde and the hiring of Whitt and the hiring of Dan Quinn. Each individual move, that makes sense to me. What gives me concern here is that this might just be the Dan Quinn hiring his buddies again. And I think there's a very fine line between hiring someone you know is a promising coach, you think can be a good coach, you're familiar with him, you have that built-in relationship, there's chemistry, there's cohesion on the defensive staff, and just hiring your buddies again when it didn't work last time. That's a very fine line to toe, and I like Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator, but if the end result here is they just roll it back, and bring back a bunch of old Falcons coaches, I don't know if that's really the route that makes the most sense for the Dallas Cowboys. So that absolutely gives me pause and gives me concern, and it's a very fine line. And in the end, it comes back to, how much do you trust your defensive coordinator? Do you believe in Dan Quinn and that he can be the guy to get this defense back on the right track? I think it is absolutely possible, but I would be lying if I didn't have some concerns about it. All the hires so far are Dan Quinn buddies, and we saw that have issues this past year with Mike McCarthy only hiring, for the most part, Mike McCarthy buddies. Again, there is that tricky balance between familiarity and chemistry and relationship and all that kind of stuff and what I'm just going to group together as nepotism. And that gives me a little bit of concern for the Dallas Cowboys. And in the end, if you had said, hey, they hired Joe Whitt, they hired this guy, and they hire Aden Durde, I'm like, okay, that probably makes some sense. I'd probably be on board with that one. Sure. But you worry a little bit about just the whole going back and forth and just hiring your friends. Now, we'll get into the talent side in a second. But first off, what's your confidence level right now in Dan Quinn being the team's defensive coordinator? And that includes the hiring as well. Let me know what you guys think here on a scale of 1 to 10. And if you guys want more coaching staff updates and news around who's interviewed, the interview of Giff Smith means he's probably not going to come as the D-line coach because that role's now been filled. But let me know what you guys think in terms of the hiring. And don't forget to hit that big red button and subscribe. That way you guys don't miss out on any of the updates that are sure to come as it relates to that defensive coaching staff. Because only 3 guys locked and loaded so far. There will be more coming in the near future. Let's move now to the talent side of it. The defensive line, that's where Aden Durde's going to work. You got one damn good football player in DeMarcus Lawrence. And then you've got Neville Gallimore and Tristan Hill, who I think can be good rotation pieces for you in the long run. I'm unconvinced that they're already at that point and that they're going to be mega super reliable pieces for you. That's a bit of a red flag for me. Antoine Woods is a good run stopper. He's in RFA. He should be back. I think you got 3 of your 4 rotation pieces, maybe 3 of your 5, because you don't have a legit impact superstar on the defensive line. Alden Smith may or may not come back. I think he'd be a decent fit. I think Randy Gregory is going to thrive as that Leo role. But you need more talent. I think that's the number one thing I want to emphasize here, regardless of who the Cowboys end up hiring as the defensive linebackers coach and D coordinator, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't really end up mattering in the end unless they find a way to get significantly better players. Better defensive tackles, guess what? Your linebackers are going to play better overnight. Better corners, better coverage, guess what? Your edge rushers are going to get more chances for sacks. Better edge rushers, guess what? Your corners are able to have a little more leeway in terms of coverage. It all ties together, and the talent right now is not good enough on the Cowboys defensive staff, or on the side of the ball, excuse me, the players are not good enough. So if you don't add more talent, if you don't get better, I mean, you could have 8 Bill Belichick's coaching the defense, and it really wouldn't end up mattering in the end. You have to get better on that side of the ball, and that's going to be critical as it relates to the offseason draft and everything else in between. Now, I did want to make one other minor note here before we go ahead and sign off for the show, namely that the Cowboys have officially lost one of their secondary coaches. Maurice Linguist has left for Michigan to be a co-defensive coordinator. It's not a huge surprise. When Joe Whitt came aboard as the team's passing game coordinator, it was pretty clear Linguist was not going to be back with the Cowboys. They get to go be the co-DC for Michigan. Actually, a pretty good landing spot there for Mo Linguist. So he's out. I don't know what's going to happen with Al Harris because of some familiarity with Al Harris and Joe Whitt, by the way. They did overlap in Green Bay. I think Harris might stick around, but that still remains to be determined. And, of course, the rest of the defensive coaching staff not yet figured out either.